I want to thank my colleagues and our witnesses for joining me today as we host this important discussion on hemp and the USDA Hemp Production Program.
That's Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett, member of the House Committee on Agriculture and the chair of the Subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research. This is the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast. My name is Eric Herlock, and today I'm going to give you a recap of that congressional hearing. It was called an examination of the USDA Hemp Production Program. I'm also going to check in with Lancaster County hemp farmer and cover crop coach Steve Groff. I heard that he knocked down 5 acres of fiber hemp using a sickle bar mower just a couple of days ago. So I want to hear how that went. I'm also going to call up Morris Beagle and find out what's in store for the Southern Hemp Expo that's taking place in Nashville in just a couple of weeks. We'll take a quick sponsor break and then we'll get into our show. This episode is brought to you in part by All Walks Small Animal Hemp Bedding. All Walks is a lifestyle pet brand created by I&D Hemp to bring high-quality, sustainable hemp pet products to the pet store. Launched in March of 2022 at the Global Pet Expo with a third-place new product award, All Walks is now available on Amazon and is coming to a pet store near you soon. So ask your local pet stores to carry All Walks Hemp Bedding. You can learn more at allwalkspet.com. All Walks, hemp goods for a better path. All right, welcome back to our show. So here it is, the first week of August 2022. It's been hot and humid here in Pennsylvania. We've gotten a little bit of rain, fair amount of thunderstorms, August in Pennsylvania. Next week, I am headed out to Montana for a special hemp event, and I will be podcasting next week's show from Fort Benton. So stay tuned for that. And if you're looking for some hemp events here in Pennsylvania, on the 16th and 17th, King's Agri-Seeds is hosting a couple of field days at their farm in Lancaster County. And also, the night of August 16th, the Penn State Research Farm in Mannheim is hosting a twilight field walk. So I'll have links for those events on the show page for this episode at Lancaster Farming. All right, here's how today's show is going to work. First, I'm going to talk to Steve Groff about his fiber crop. Then I'm going to talk to Morris Beagle about the Southern Hemp Expo. And then we're going to listen to my truncated version of that congressional hearing that happened last week on Capitol Hill. The hearing itself was about an hour and a half long. I've shortened it considerably for your listening pleasure. Anyway, here we go. So, Steve Groff, I heard you were harvesting some fiber hemp yesterday. I saw that on the internet.
Well, we cut it down, and that's quite interesting. I've never done it before, but how you lay down 12-foot high fiber hemp for the first time, it was let me just say, it was interesting, it was fun, and we'll see what goes from here to get it in, but we got her cut off.
All right. Well, I got some questions for you first. So, what variety was it?
So this was Yuma, which is a big, tall, and like I said, 12-foot tall. No bud on it yet at all. Not one single bud. We did leave some stand, so we're going to grow that out just to see how tall it'll get.
All right. Cool. And you said it was about 12 foot?
Yes.
And why did you cut it now? Like you wanted to cut it before it went to flower?
So I cut it now because I'm working with biofill fibers with David Canby, and that's when he wanted it cut.
Okay.
For what his use of it is, getting much longer than that creates some issues. So, as in so many things in hemp, you got to do what your market dictates.
Right.
And this is just an example of that. So that's what we did.
Okay. So how many acres did you have in the ground?
Well, I did 5, and this is actually a part of that USDA grant with the Heartland Industries.
Industries, yeah. Okay.
This is part of that. So 5 acres is what it was, and wow, it was a beautiful stand. Just not a weed in it, and it's just it was one of those things where I feel like I'm finally understanding fiber and getting the good varieties, and we got to get it baled up. That's the next challenge, and we're gonna have to figure out a few things in that respect, but. Maybe I'll have to talk to you in 2 weeks or so to see if we figure that out.
Right. Well, did you like direct seeded into a no-till field, or what was the method for planting?
Well, not only no-till, but into cover crops. Black oats and hairy vetch I've found to be the best cover crops before hemp. Hemp loves hairy vetch, apparently, and black oats is one that there's no allelopathic effect on the small hemp seeds.
Okay.
It grew great. I direct seeded it in 15-inch rows. It was roughly 50 pounds of seed per acre, which with the seed count, I think is around 500,000 or more seeds per acre.
That's a lot of seeds.
I think we might want to play around with the seeding rate, because I did use a lower rate as well, just to see, and I think maybe we could drop back a little bit to get a little more consistent diameter of the stalks, because that would be what the processor would want. And because I have a precision planter, we can literally singulate the seeds and plant them, very precisely. So what I observed is I still want to fine-tune the seeding rate, but you can go too thick, you can go too thin, and we'll see what next year brings. Okay.
And so did you use sickle bar? What were you cutting it with?
Yeah, I've been forewarned not to use a disc-type mower, although I know some people have done it, but I've heard some horror stories on that. And this is the irony of this, Eric. We got to go back in time to the old-fashioned sickle bar concept. Now, I say old-fashioned concept, but there's also very new style sickle bars that I&J Manufacturing has. They're using an ESM sickle bar from Germany. It's a double sickle, they call it. There's two sickles in it, and if anybody knows anything about sickle bars, they know what I'm talking about. So there's two of them instead of having guards or like the normal ones would have.
Okay.
You have two sickles operating against each other. The one's going left, the other's going right at the same time. Okay. And it creates an actual scissors action. Just picture scissors. That's exactly what it's doing. And I'm telling you, Eric, that cut through that hemp. And some of those stalks were an inch in diameter. It cut them through like a hot knife through butter.
All right.
Yeah. So
cool. So did you have any issues, like unforeseen stuff, or was it pretty smooth?
No, it was very smooth once we figured some things out. Never used one of them before. Quick learning curve. I will say this, and I was told this from a farmer with using a sickle bar before, that a slight amount of wind can really make a difference how it lays down. And you would not think that. Oh. And also you got to go fast enough. You have to have a sickle bar that can go 4 miles an hour or so that when it cuts, it immediately throws it back. Okay. If you go too slow, it'll just like stand there, and then it'll start leaning front, and it won't make a nice swath. And even yesterday when we were cutting in the afternoon, there was just some light winds, and I don't think they were more than 10 miles an hour. And every once in a while, it would just blow that stuff into the on-cut or blow it back around. That was surprising how that effect was, and we actually considered waiting till the evening, but we were able to cut the one way a little bit more, and we played around with different styles and so forth. But that was a new one. That was unexpected. That a light wind would affect it. But again, it's 12 feet tall, so.
And you don't ever have any issues with wind harvesting other crops?
No, never. Yeah. That's a total new paradigm, because usually with a disc mower that I'm familiar with cutting hay, it could be 40-mile-an-hour winds. It wouldn't make a difference.
Yeah. All right. So when did you plant this hemp?
It was planted on May the 18th, so you can figure out how many days it was. 12 feet tall. It's amazing, that stuff. Wow. It starts growing, and then when it goes from 18 inches high and on up, it's. I didn't do the math, but it's just like almost a couple inches a day. Wow,
that's amazing. Cool. So you're going to let it sit in the field and ret a little bit until you figure out what you're going to do for baling?
Yeah, the plan is, either heavy overnight dews or a rain shower or two. You can get too much rain, but a rain shower or two on it is a good thing to help the retting process to start breaking down a little bit.
Yeah.
One of the concerns we have right now is because we didn't crimp it at all, and you don't want to crimp it much because you don't want to crush open the stalk that the herd falls out. And I could see how that could happen because I was playing around with it myself. And I do know some people who are doing some very light crimping, but one of the concerns we have in baling it, and we're going to bale it with a round baler, is that it won't be like a stick going in and not flow through the machinery. Now there's a few little things that we're going to be checking into. We might need to get for the baler. We plan to use a New Holland wet baler that's capable of baling wet hay. That's what the best are, according to what I've heard.
All right.
So we'll test it out and see how this all works. But we're going to rake it in narrow swaths. You can't ted it like in hay, where you can ted it and stir it around. It's too much like sticks.
Okay.
So I have a small rotary rake, and we're going to rake that in narrow swaths, and then maybe turn it as often as needed until the final time. We'll rake a couple swaths together and we'll bale it up. That's the plan.
All right.
But we'll see. We'll see how it all turns out.
Right. So getting back to planting it in cover crops, how did you prep for that? Did you crimp the cover crops? Yeah.
Yeah. So
you don't do a burn down on that.
Well, so what I did in this case here, and this is just from my experience, and again, I did apply a little bit of herbicide with the roller to get 100% kill, because by May the 18th, it's not mature enough. The roller will not take it out. The physiological maturity of the cover crop is not. If I would wait till June the 10th, then I might not need any herbicide. But with all this being said, I mean, I want to be quick to add that I am looking at some organic type burn down herbicides. Actually, I have a phone call this afternoon with a company that's making one that I think shows a promise. And in the conjunction with rolling, this could potentially be a game changer for all crops.
Was that HARP?
That's kind of an aside here. Yeah, that's the HARP Bio.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right,
yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, thanks for letting us know how it went. It's exciting.
All right, Eric. Always good to talk to you.
Morris Beagle, how are you doing?
Doing great. Eric, how are you doing?
I'm hanging in there. Summer's rolling along up here in Pennsylvania. So what, you're in Colorado now, but I imagine you're headed down to Nashville, Tennessee in a couple of weeks?
2 weeks from now, we'll be in Tennessee getting things set up for the Southern Hemp Expo.
Cool. And this is what, the 4th annual Southern Hemp Expo?
It is the 4th one. It would be the 5th if we would have had one in 2020, but...
Right, but we all took that year off. So you're back in Nashville this year. Last year you were in North Carolina, but you're back over in Nashville. What can people expect this year?
Yeah, so we're going back to Nashville. This is where we started in 2018. 2019 we went to Franklin up the road because we were at the fairgrounds in 2018, and the buildings we were in, they actually demolished and they rebuilt buildings. And we were going to be back there in 2020, but that didn't happen. And in 2021, we were going to be there, and that didn't happen because of COVID still. So we ended up going to Raleigh for a year. And now we're back in Nashville at the fairgrounds. There's brand new facilities. There's 3 expo halls. One of those will be for a conference. 2 of them will have lots of exhibitors and some activation areas. We've got a food and beverage, or a hemp food and beverage fair, as well as a music festival on Saturday. It's open to the general public, so that's August 20th.
Oh, cool. Okay, music festival. Nice.
Yeah, we've got lots of education. We've got music. We've got little breakout cool things that are going on. We've got this effective games. There's going to be kind of a game show area that we're doing this with a promotional partner. So we're doing some things that we've never done before, and it seems like it's going to be pretty cool.
All right, cool. And people can still register and attend, and they can learn about that at southernhempexpo.com. Is there anything else people should know about the event?
Well, you should get your hotel reservations ASAP before prices go up, and that's also on the website. There's a lodging link there. We're at the Sonesta Airport Hotel, which is where we were at back in 2018. It's a really nice place. We're having a cool welcome party there with all kinds of hemp food and beverages and so forth on the Thursday the 18th to get things rolling.
Cool. So something for everybody. I see on your website that you've got a big sponsor, First Citizens Bank. Tell me about how that came together, because that seems like a big deal.
Yeah, so having a national bank step up and want to be presenting sponsor for a National Hemp Expo is a big deal for the industry. As you know, that we've had issues with banking since the get-go of this industry, and First Citizens is based out of North Carolina. They've been in business for over 120 years. They're very ag-focused, and one of their longest clients running for over 110 years in North Carolina was a tobacco farming client, and they switched over to hemp in 2018, and then they got dropped by First Citizens unbeknownst to the upper management, and then upper management's like, hey, we can't lose our longest standing customer because of this. And so those folks figured out the whole compliance side of things, and they're really excited about the future of the hemp industry, and they want to support hemp businesses from the farm all the way through to brands, and they're excited to be part of this and to let people know what options they have from a banking standpoint. So we're really excited for the industry itself, and we're thankful that First Citizens Bank is really the first national bank to step up and say, hey, we support the hemp industry. We know it's legitimate, and we want to help legitimize it.
Cool. That's awesome. I wish I could be there at the Southern Hemp Expo this year, but unfortunately I'm not able to make it. Sort of blew the whole travel budget on my trip to Montana next week. Are you going to be up in Montana?
Unfortunately not. I was just in Monte Vista for the Global Fiber Processing grand opening, and Ken Elliott from IND Hemp was there, and I'd love to be out there here in a couple of weeks, but it's right before Southern Hemp Expo and just can't make it happen.
Yeah,
well, I'm sure you'll have a great time.
Yeah,
it's awesome facility, great people, and they'll be at Southern Hemp Expo as well. Morgan Tweet's going to be doing a keynote. We'll be talking hemp food and hemp grain and animal feed and the grain and fiber exemption, which is a big push, but with those folks and National Hemp Association and with us and the industry. It's like we need to exempt grain and fiber so farmers can grow it just like corn, soy, wheat, anything else, and they don't have to worry about testing. They don't have to worry about FBI checks. They can grow it like anything else and just not feel like there's a liability there.
Amen to that. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's what we got to get to. And once we get to that, and we will get to that, you're going to see this industry really go the other direction.
Right.
There's a lot of doom and gloom out there. You can see some of the media articles by certain groups that are trashing on the U.S. hemp industry at this point in time and making all kinds of just ridiculous statements about it. But you know what? Things peaked. They dropped. Mostly the fault of the FDA and them not having any sort of regulatory thing in place for CBD at this point, and it's affected the entire industry. And we can look at Bo Whitney's economic outlook and what he's had to put together, and he makes a lot of great points as to why things are the way they are now. But if you look at the trend starting this year and going next year and going up through 2030, we've got a lot of great opportunities ahead of us, and this industry is only going to go one way, and that's up.
Yeah, man. I'm with you on that. Yeah, I talked to Bo a couple of weeks ago about sort of, how the grain and fiber sector is being affected by, other parts of the hemp and cannabis industry. So very interesting stuff. Yeah.
Bo's got some opinions about big cannabis too, and I say
right
on, Bo. Keep preaching the good word because he's correct, and people need to take heed to that, and so do our legislators and policymakers, and they need to look at that and say, this industry really can make a difference, especially when we're looking at the climate issues that are facing us and what we need to do from a material standpoint the next couple of decades.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, agriculture has to be like the main part of the mitigation solution. So, yeah. All right. Well, anything else you want to tell us about the Southern Hemp Expo?
Just if you're able and willing, come to Nashville. We're going to have a great time. The industry's going to get together, all kinds of cool activities going on, and it's great when everybody can get together under one roof and talk shop and learn from each other and do business.
Cool. Sounds like it's going to be a great one. So, all right, Morris, thanks for your time today. We'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care, Eric.
Last week, there was a congressional hearing to examine the USDA Hemp Production Program. This was put on by the House Agriculture Committee. It was actually their subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research, which is chaired by Representative Stacey Plaskett from the U.S. Virgin Islands.
Today we will hear from a panel of experts, including producers, researchers, tribal members, and state agriculture commissioners who will provide an overview of the hemp industry and insights towards the 2023 Farm Bill.
Yeah, so that's what this was. There was a panel of politicians and a panel of experts. And first, the politicians, sort of spoke about what they knew or didn't know about industrial hemp. And then the panel of experts talked about their area of expertise. And then there was a Q&A. So first, Representative Plaskett sort of gave a basic history of hemp in the U.S.
Until recently, the hemp industry was outlawed due to restrictions put in place in the Marijuana Tax Act of 1938.
She talked about the Controlled Substances Act, and then the 2014 Farm Bill, 2018 Farm Bill, interim final rule, and the final rule, and how the USDA was tasked to create this program. Then she hands it over to Ranking Member Jim Baird, Republican from Indiana, and he makes a handful of really good points, and this first is kind of telling.
So I think it's noteworthy to mention that this is really the first hearing that the House Committee on Agriculture has held on hemp ever.
Yes.
So I don't know if that's a point we should be proud of or kind of embarrassed by, because look, it's 2022, and the 2014 Farm Bill, was from 2014, which is almost 10 years ago. And this is the first time they're meeting about it. And then he makes another good point about the USDA and the FDA and how they're absent from this hearing.
I do believe it is a missed opportunity that we don't hear from the federal agencies that we are tasked and they are tasked with implementing provisions related to the hemp today.
So I don't know why the FDA and the USDA weren't at this hearing. Like, were they not invited? Or maybe they were just too busy. Maybe they were washing their hair. I don't know, but I think it's a sad fact that, like Baird said, it's a missed opportunity, right? Surely these agencies knew about this hearing.
So, Madam Chair, I remain hopeful that we can have an opportunity to hear from both the USDA and the FDA at one of our future meetings.
Right. When's that going to be? 10 years from now? Anyway, so Jim Baird went on to talk about the many uses of industrial hemp,
including building materials, insulation, animal bedding, concrete, and even car parts.
And he mentioned the potential for hemp
in animal feed.
So he appears to be pretty knowledgeable about the potential of hemp and also the current state of the industry.
We're seeing much of the hemp grown in the United States used to manufacture hemp-derived CBD. Since the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill, there has been no regulatory framework from the Food and Drug Administration for CBD products, leading to some uncertainty for producers, for manufacturers, retailers, and as well as consumers.
Yeah, he's right. And then Stacey Plaskett introduced the panel of experts, and first up was Dr. Brandy Phipps from Central State University in Ohio, which
is a public, historically black college and university and an 1890 land-grant institution.
Dr. Phipps has a background in
biomedical and nutritional sciences, and my work is in what others have coined sustainable nutrition science.
I think Dr. Phipps was an excellent choice for this panel because she said a lot of things that lawmakers need to hear as they craft the language for the next Farm Bill.
In order to become a stable component of the agricultural economy, the nascent U.S. hemp market needs diversification and a robust establishment of the grain sector. Hemp grain has the potential to be an excellent domestic feed ingredient for many types of livestock. It is nutrient dense, with seeds either consumed whole or dehulled as hearts. Hemp hearts have a healthy balance of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids, which are known as heart healthy, and easily digestible protein. And it is one of the few plant protein sources with sufficient levels of all the essential amino acids that humans need. In Europe, hemp grain is already approved for use in animal feeds. And in the US, the hearts, protein, and seed oil have been established as generally regarded as safe or GRAS for human consumption. Exploring ways in which we can open up additional markets in the hemp sector, including establishing hemp as a safe feed ingredient, could provide new grain markets for the hemp sector and sustainable feed. Importantly, studies indicate that incorporation of hemp into feeds may provide key improvements to the nutritional profile of those animal products, thereby enhancing human health.
And then next up was Marcus Greeno.
Poso mauni wiok nakato manowich kiki tim. Hello everyone, I'm going to speak. My name is Marcus Greeno, and I'm the Executive Director of Hempstead Project Heart, a nonprofit organization dedicated to redeveloping thriving hemp economies that connect tribal, urban, and rural communities throughout the United States. I've come before you today to testify on the USDA Hemp Production Program. I'm also here for the hemp pioneers who pushed our country towards acceptance. Alex Whiteplume, Chris Boucher, Jack Herrera, Barbara Filipino, Lawrence Serbin, and Richard Rose.
Mr. Greeno gave a really nice recap of the history of hemp in the United States, including how much research the USDA did in the early part of the 20th century before it was outlawed. And then he told this heartbreaking story of growing hemp on his reservation in Wisconsin in 2015.
I began my journey as a hemp researcher in 2015 for my tribal nation, the Menominee Indian Tribe of Wisconsin. We grew hemp on our homelands for research purposes to spur economic development for our people under Section 7606 of the 2014 Farm Bill and under the guidance of the Department of Justice's Wilkinson Memorandum. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful due to federal overreach by the Drug Enforcement Agency's raid on our hemp crop in October 2015. Under the auspices of a marijuana raid on tribal lands, the DEA took our hemp crop at harvest time that had seed with a one-year acclimation to the Great Lakes region. Even our topsoil was seized by a bulldozer. We never received the test results from DEA to prove our hemp had tested over the legal limit.
Since then, he's been working tirelessly as an advocate and an educator in the hemp space. And then he offered 3 main suggestions for the next Farm Bill.
There needs to be a separation between the definition and regulation of industrial hemp from cannabinoid and floral hemp.
Yep, that's a good one.
Bank regulations need revision to ease current restrictions for hemp operations.
Also good.
There needs to be a USDA stamp of approval for hemp being shipped between the various jurisdictions in the United States.
There you go. Next up was the CEO of EcoFiber, Eric Wong. He talked about the history of his company, how they started in Australia in 1999, and they've been operating in the U.S. since 2015. And he talked about the environmental impact that hemp can have.
There's an opportunity for a net zero carbon solution via industrial hemp, which is considered to be one of the most carbon negative agricultural or forestry crops available. Given that most things we produce and do in the world today are actually carbon positive, industrial hemp allows us, in a good way, to actually think negative.
He also talked about the lack of guidance from the FDA and how that's hampering the cannabinoid side of the hemp industry.
CBD commerce and investment has been chilled due to continued inaction at the federal level, which has impaired economic opportunity for American farmers and processors.
Next up was Dr. Ryan Quarles, the Commissioner of Agriculture for the great state of Kentucky. He talked about the history of hemp in Kentucky, not just in the state, but also in his own family.
My great-grandfather grew hemp on the banks of the Kentucky River while my grandfather fought in World War II as a Marine.
He showcased a few companies that are doing great work in Kentucky in the hemp space, such as
Victory Hemp Foods
and
Hemp Wood is selling hardwood floors made out of hemp.
He talked about the CBD industry in Kentucky, the boom and the bust, and how now there's just not as many CBD growers there. But he said the real challenge for the CBD industry is the FDA's lack of guidance.
If the FDA gave us direction, more private sector investment in hemp products would occur, and many well-known consumer brands will have tremendous interest in hemp products.
Next up was Colorado Commissioner of Agriculture Kate Greenberg. She, too, talked about the history of hemp in the state and how proud she is of the sort of program that they put together at the Colorado Department of Agriculture.
Colorado has been fostering the growth of the hemp industry for the better part of a decade. These efforts are exemplified through the Colorado Hemp Advancement and Management Plan, or CHAMP for short.
She talked about what that CHAMP program is, how it came together, how it works. She talked about the fact that acres of hemp in Colorado are declining. She talked about working with the USDA.
USDA staff have been very responsive to our concerns as we have requested greater flexibility from them through the rulemaking process, and we very much value their partnership. However, there are certain ways in which Congress can provide support to federal agencies to allow for greater flexibility and improve our state-run hemp programs. Specifically, we have 5 recommendations for this committee to consider.
5. She's got 5 suggestions. Let's hear them. Number 1.
Remove the DEA requirements for testing labs. Our state-of-the-art laboratory began the process of obtaining DEA certification in 2019. However, as of this hearing, we still await their approval. This unnecessary burden can be removed by the help of Congress.
Number 2.
Allow the use of certified seed as an alternative to the strict testing requirement. We believe there is much to learn in this regard, and Colorado is a willing partner to explore what is possible.
Number 3.
Remove background check requirements. Hemp should be treated like the agricultural commodity it is, and producers should not be treated as potential criminals for the production of a legal hemp crop.
Amen to that. Number 4.
Establish a federal grant program to support state hemp programs. A grant program would help states continue to manage our own hemp programs while taking some of the burden off of USDA.
And number 5.
Support federal agencies, particularly the FDA, in accelerating the regulatory process to allow the use of hemp as feed.
So then it was Q&A time. So members of the subcommittee got to ask the panel of experts a bunch of questions. So first, Stacy Plaskett asked Ryan Quarles from Kentucky,
Has USDA final rule helped to clarify things for states, tribes, and other producers?
and he meandered a little bit, but he really brought it back to the FDA, saying that we need productive conversations with the FDA.
so that they can give us clear guidance, particularly on what to do with floral products derived from hemp.
Then she asked Kate Greenberg from Colorado,
What's needed to provide certainty and stability across the market for farmers, producers, and consumers of hemp?
and she was like, processing and supply chains.
We have a lot of production capacity and incredible farmers who are able to grow fantastic crops. We need to make sure every step along the supply chain across these market opportunities is strengthened and grown.
Then the chairwoman asked about socially disadvantaged farmers.
How do you suggest increasing socially disadvantaged farmers' involvement in the hemp production?
Dr. Phipps from Central State fielded that question and basically like the USDA is doing a good job at this and they should do more of it.
The USDA has already made great strides, and I do want to give them accolades for the programs that they have put into place for tribal communities as well as historically Black colleges and universities, and for Black and other minority farmers. Encouraging those sort of transdisciplinary, multi-institutional research projects and outreach projects would be helpful.
Thank you.
Then Jim Baird from Indiana was back up to ask his questions, and he asked Dr. Phipps from Central State some more specific questions about her grant-funded research project. She went into some good detail about that. And then he asked Eric Wong from Ecofiber about Australia.
So could you share some of the differences between what's going on in Australia and what you see here in the U.S. and what this committee might learn to incorporate in our 2023 Farm Bill?
I think the U.S. with the Farm Bill in 2018 has probably a better structure. In Australia right now, hemp is regulated by 3 different agencies. For food, there's something called FSANCE. For medicinal purposes, is a Therapeutic Good Administration. And for fiber, it's actually the Department of Primary Industries. So for me, it's a lot of work managing 3 different regulators for a single crop.
Thank you very much. I'm out of time.
Thank you.
I could spend another hour here
Yes.
asking questions. Oh, you're going to say no. Okay. Thank you.
Then it was Representative Chantel Brown's turn to step up to the plate. Actually, I think she was in her car. Her background was blurred, but I'm pretty sure she was in her car. Anyway, that's fine. I've had meetings in my car. I've recorded podcasts in my car. Anyway, she had a question about DEA labs for Mr. Greeno.
What are the impacts you have seen in certain areas of the country where there is no access to DEA-approved laboratories?
Some of the issues that we're running into is because there's only a few registered DEA labs, a lot of the THC testing is only in certain areas. So you have to literally wait. So you have to take the time to cut your samples or have your samples be cut, and they have to be processed and shipped over to the lab. Now, if there's not a lab in your state, you have to wait and go a few states over. So there's basically a lack of testing capacity in our state, in our country right now, to handle the hemp industry if we were to start to expand more.
After Representative Brown's questions, it was time to hear from G.T. Thompson, representative from Pennsylvania. Maybe you've heard of him lately because he's been in the news. His son just got married, so congratulations to the Thompson family.
Mr. Wong, over the last 18 months, my colleagues and I have been championing conservative natural climate solutions to help address climate change.
Did you catch that? Conservative natural climate solutions to address climate change. Anyway, as you were saying, GT?
We know our producers are part of that solution, a big part of that solution, not part of the problem.
Let me just jump back in here and say that if you're human using fossil fuels, living in modern America, you're part of the problem. But anyway, I digress.
That being said, I'm particularly interested in the work that Ecofiber is doing to make hemp a natural climate solution, particularly surrounding hemp black. Can you talk more about this work?
So when you start from the core part of the plant, we know it's carbon negative. It's one of the largest carbon sequesters, so I won't go into that topic. But of the plant, a large part of the fiber is being used already for many different uses, and that makes up about 25 to 30% of the plant, which leaves, vast majority of the plant, the stalk, unused. And it's being used for a lot of lower quality, low grade uses such as animal bedding. So what the stalk has is a very high amount of carbon in it. And so we went through a lot of research and developed a carbonization process to actually create an equivalent of carbon black. And so for everything that's black or colored black in the world right now, it's typically used by carbon black, which is the incomplete combustion of petroleum, which is a carbon positive input. So the hemp black that we create with the hemp-based carbon is 100% bio-based, as tested by the USDA as part of the Biotechnology program, and it's a highly carbon negative input. And so that input is carbon black, which can be used in bioplastics, it can be used in rubber, it can be used as colorant in textiles, or as an ink or a coating right now. So our focus right now is using it to make a lot of different plastic products, 25% bio-based. Everywhere from as simple as black shipping pallets, which is a big movement to shipping pallets to do that, to black plastics used in agricultural purposes or construction purposes, to use it as the dyes as opposed to carbon black for something as simple as jeans that are black on that. So what we're really doing is finding a one-for-one replacement for an existing supply chain material that's used significantly across the world, and it's petroleum-based, and replacing it with something that's plant-based, which is hemp. So there's a pretty significant net carbon effect. And like I said, we use the term think negative because while the world wants to get to net zero, most everything is carbon positive, so you got to have something negative to get there. And the beauty of hemp is there are so many different uses of hemp that I only am covering a very narrow pathway to that. But because it's such a flexible crop to be used for so many different uses, you can actually have the growing being negative and actually permanently sequester carbon while you're doing it. And for us, the biggest thing is it has to be a one-for-one supply chain replacement, because I would not expect manufacturers downstream to invest significant amounts of capital just because we want to put hemp into it. Number two, it has to be equal technical specs, which it is. And three, we have to make sure it's the cost equal to or better than. And in due course with scale, I would assume that a petroleum-based carbon black or a hemp-based carbon black, we can get the hemp-based carbon black equal to or better on a cost structure than petroleum.
Very good. Well, thank you. Any other witnesses like to comment on how hemp can be used as a natural climate solution? Go ahead,
Yes.
Commissioner.
Thank you, Representative, for the question.
That's Kate Greenberg from Colorado.
I think what Mr. Wong next to me described is very much how Colorado is thinking about the opportunities with regards to hemp. We are very focused on climate mitigation and the leadership role agriculture can play in solving our climate challenges that we have before us now. Hemp is a big part of that solution. I think we have a lot of opportunities, again, looking across diversifying supply chains, investing in the processing and manufacturing, and then going back to the farm and making sure our farmers have support around climate-smart agricultural production to make sure we are looking at soil, water, and climate all together and the markets that combine those things into a sustainable marketplace for our producers. Thank you.
Kate Greenberg gets it. Agriculture has to play a huge role in climate change mitigation. And it's not a conservative idea. It's not a liberal idea. It's the right idea.
Excellent. Any other witnesses care to comment on that?
Mr. Thompson, I just might add one more, Mr. Thompson.
Please.
The one thing that we're working on as well is mine site remediation. because there's a lot of soil, as you know, what happens on mine sites, and hemp is actually a phenomenal remediator of soil to bring it back to life again by putting the nutrients back in. So, from a soil standpoint, it has a significant opportunity for that.
Having represented now for some time the Pennsylvania 15th, it was the 5th district before that, but it's the district that has more abandoned mine sites than the other 434 districts added together. So that's a very exciting innovation you shared this morning. So thank you to all our witnesses. Madam Chair, thank you.
Then it was time for Representative Shelley Pingree from Maine to step up to the plate.
I think someone earlier mentioned my bill, the Hemp Advancement Act, and some of the problems I'm going to bring up this morning I'm trying to solve in that bill. But I want to discuss one in particular that seems frustrating. The existing DEA lab testing requirements plus the 10-year ban on people with drug-related felony convictions receiving a hemp disease basically treat hemp like a Schedule I drug, which is ridiculous in my mind. And I've talked to some producers in Maine who have problems where their employees are struggling to get fingerprints that are acceptable by the FBI for criminal history reports. One grower told us that had to be printed 5 times before it finally worked. We have only one post office that does fingerprinting, which is in Portland, Maine. I can't make appointments there. The State Bureau of Identification does fingerprinting. They're in Augusta. We have a big rural state. We have growers all over the state. So I'm just talking about some of the complications. My bill would remove this unjust 10-year ban and also removes the requirement about hemp testing in DAA labs, which I think has already come up. But Ms. Greenberg, thank you for the work that you're doing in Colorado. Have growers in your state run into similar issues? And could you speak to how eliminating the DEA lab testing requirement plus this 10-year conviction ban could help our hemp growers?
Absolutely. Thank you, Representative Pingree, and excellent questions. On the first question, the DEA labs, as I mentioned in my testimony earlier, this has been a big barrier for us. We have a state-of-the-art brand new laboratory at our headquarters in Colorado. We have fantastic scientists, experts in their field. We are a state that has been regulating both marijuana and hemp successfully for many years and doing so separately and able to manage that through our labs across the state. So the fact that we are now 3 years into navigating our request for certification with DEA and still have yet to receive it, with almost a decade track record of success, to us indicates that is excessive in the regulatory structure and not necessary to creating a safe and reliable regulatory framework for regulating hemp in our states. On the second question on the 10-year ban, as I mentioned earlier, we feel strongly that hemp is a commodity crop. It is legal to produce and that we should not be criminalizing or intending to criminalize producers for producing a legal crop. I think with that framework, that 10-year ban is something we would absolutely be interested in looking at. We are doing quite a lot of equity work as well throughout our state and making sure that folks who have not had access to producing for one reason or another have access to that now that hemp is legal and is a legal crop, and we want to make sure that we maintain that within our regulatory structure as well.
So we go from Maine to California.
I would like to yield 5 minutes to Mr. Carbajal of California, if he's available.
So Carbajal gets up and he talks about how, in 2019 there was a ton of growers and then it shrunk to not many growers, and he rattles off a bunch of different factors that could have caused that. And then he asks,
which of these factors do you most attribute to the decline in registered acreage, and how can Congress help alleviate this?
Perfect question for Kate Greenberg. Here she is.
I think the primary driver of that sort of rise and fall within the course of a single season was sort of the fury or the fervor around the hemp production opportunities within that year. Just tons of untapped opportunity, a lot of folks coming in at once, an unregulated marketplace, and a lack of diversity in market opportunities. So where I see us now, I think we're in a much more stable growth position. I think we've probably stabilized to a place that's more manageable based on just the maturity of markets right now. We're in a nascent phase of this industry. And I think as markets mature, as we get more stable regulatory environments, and we build up the supply chain processing and manufacturing opportunities, and then as we've discussed, look at those environmental opportunities as well, where our hemp producers can tie into climate markets or other marketplaces that are driving toward a carbon neutral future. As all of those aspects develop, I think we're going to see a steady rise back toward production, but in a more sustainable rate.
Dr. Phipps, in your testimony, you talked about a lack of incentives for hemp growers to partner with domestic buyers and processors. What kind of incentives would be helpful? Do you see Congress facilitating this connection? If so, what should that look like?
I think that if we can incentivize, as we fund processors to build infrastructure, we provide funding within that they can set aside to recruit growers and pay growers for their products when that happens, we can build the network at the same time.
Next up was Representative Al Lawson from Florida, who had a question for Dr. Phipps.
Can you speak more on to what are some of the effects within the land-grant university system corporate extension services that provide technical and financial assistance to historically underserved agriculture products, including new and beginning and small size businesses, veteran-owned, and socially disadvantaged farmers and ranchers based on race and gender?
We need to make sure that we are providing opportunities for farmers and producers and processors from historically disadvantaged communities to have access to funding in order to build infrastructure. In the past, there hasn't necessarily been equitable access to those competitive grants. We know that both colleges that serve historically disadvantaged communities, as well as producers and farmers from disadvantaged communities, may not have professional grant writers. They may not have the ability or the infrastructure set up to be able to competitively apply for those grants. And so providing opportunities for that, whether that is earmarked funds specifically dedicated to them, or whether that is providing assistance in the process of applying for and receiving those fundings and implementing those particular programs would be helpful.
Dr. Phillips, just one other thing that I would ask you. I'm concerned about gender, especially for women. How have all of this industry development and stuff affected women who wanted to enter in this process of hemp development, especially I'd see what's happening in the state of Florida?
So I can't speak to the state of Florida. I am in the state of Ohio, but I can speak as a woman who is in the field of agriculture and STEM. And you are correct. Historically, the fields of agriculture and STEM have been very dominated by men, dominated by white men. And that's seen even in the sushi project that I'm leading. There's been 32 that have been funded. These are those flagship programs of the USDA. Out of those 32, there have been only 8 women that are lead on the projects. When we start layering on the additional things such as on top of gender, such as race or ethnicity, we start to see that there is a significant underrepresentation of women receiving funding, of women farmers, Black women farmers, brown women farmers that are entering the field. I certainly think that a review of funding processes, of the way that we are recruiting, right, targeting recruitment of those individuals so that we can, I would say, bring back, because women and women of color have always been involved in agriculture. They have always had a hand in growing the crops that feed their families and their communities. And so I think that targeted recruitment and targeted outreach and targeted funding to bring women, especially women of color, back into a typically otherwise dominated agriculture and STEM field is needed and important. And I thank you for the question.
So then it was pretty much time to wrap things up. So Jim Baird made some closing remarks.
But we've heard a lot of great recommendations for the 2023 Farm Bill here today. And one that I'd like to add is that the FDA hasn't really had any kind of regulatory framework for hemp-derived CBD. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage us to include that in our discussions about the 2023 Farm Bill.
So there you go. There's proof that he was actually paying attention to what the experts were saying.
Thank you, and I agree wholeheartedly with that assessment.
And just like that,
this hearing of the Subcommittee on Biotechnology, Horticulture, and Research is adjourned.
And just like that, this episode is adjourned too. But a couple of things before we go. I've got a cool video of Steve Groff cutting that fiber hemp at his farm in Holtwood, Pennsylvania. You can find it on the show page for this very episode at lancasterfarming.com. My name is Eric Herlock. I am the digital editor at Lancaster Farming Newspaper, the greatest agricultural newspaper in the world. Check us out. Get yourself a subscription. If you want to get in touch with me, just send an email. You can send it directly to podcast@lancasterfarming.com. All right, until next time, I'll see you in Montana.
Industrial hemp.
Season 2, Episode 30 of the Lancaster Farming Industrial Hemp Podcast is copyright 2022 by Lancaster Farming Newspaper, which is part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written and recorded, edited, and produced by Eric Herlock. The audio from the hearing is courtesy of the U.S. government. Thanks. And any music you hear throughout the show is courtesy of Tin Bird's Shadow.